The hum of the fluorescent lights in the supply depot was the loudest thing about Sergeant Ellie Ward. Most days, her biggest challenge was locating a misplaced box of paperclips or wrangling a stubborn printer. The other soldiers, boisterous and eager for action, barely noticed her, or if they did, it was to crack jokes about the quiet, base ghost who seemed to materialize and vanish with equal parts silence and efficiency. They didn't know the calm that resided within her was forged in a different kind of fire. They didn't know the precision she used to organize inventory was the same precision that once disarmed hardened targets. And they certainly didn't know that on one ordinary chaotic day, the quiet supply clerk would walk into a living nightmare and emerge as the unexpected hero. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Sergeant Ellie Ward moved through the labyrinthine aisles of the supply depot with the silent grace of a shadow, her movements economical and precise. The air, thick with the scent of cardboard, cleaning supplies, and aging paper, was her domain. For 2 years, this had been her life at the sprawling NATO compound in rural Poland. Her days were a methodical ballet of requisitions, inventory checks, and the occasional fleeting interaction with a gruff quartermaster or a hurried logistics officer. She was a supply clerk, a role that, in the grand scheme of military operations, was often overlooked, even derided, by those who saw themselves on the front lines. Her colleagues, mostly young, eager soldiers fresh from training, barely registered her presence. When they did, it was usually in passing, a quick nod, a muttered request, or more often, a good-natured jab about her reticence. They called her the base ghost, a moniker born from her uncanny ability to appear and disappear without a sound, her minimal conversational contributions, and the faint, almost imperceptible way she seemed to blend into the background. She was an enigma, a quiet storm in a world of loud declarations. Her uniform was always immaculate, her dark hair pulled back in a severe no-nonsense bun, her gaze direct but rarely lingering. She rarely smiled, and laughter was an even rarer sound from her lips. Ellie didn't mind the jokes or the anonymity. In fact, she preferred it. The mundane rhythm of supply management was a comforting balm, a deliberate contrast to the life she had once led, a life shrouded in secrecy and fraught with peril. The quiet hum of the depot, the predictable flow of incoming and outgoing materiel, was a welcome antidote to the adrenaline-fueled chaos that had once defined her existence. It was a self-imposed exile, a retreat from a past that still echoed in the quiet chambers of her mind, a past she had chosen to bury beneath layers of routine and unremarkable tasks. Her true skills, honed over years of rigorous training and unforgetting combat, were dormant, hidden beneath the veneer of a mild-mannered clerk. Her hands, currently occupied with stacking neatly folded uniforms, bore faint, almost imperceptible scars, silent testimonials to close-quarter engagements and improbable escapes. Her eyes, often downcast, held a depth of experience that few could fathom, reflecting a world of calculated risks, lightning-fast decisions, and the cold logic of survival. She was a ghost, not just to the base, but to her own past, a meticulously crafted illusion of normalcy. One crisp autumn morning, however, the mundane routine of the NATO compound was shattered. The usual cacophony of distant drills and rumbling vehicles was abruptly replaced by the jarring wail of an alarm, a harsh, insistent shriek that sliced through the air, signaling an immediate and grave threat. It wasn't a drill. The urgency in the electronic voice blaring over the loudspeakers, distorted but undeniable, confirmed it. Intruder alert! Intruder alert! All personnel, secure your positions. Repeat, intruder alert! Ellie, in the middle of counting respirators, paused, her movements freezing. Her senses, long dulled by routine, snapped instantly to attention. The familiar adrenaline, a phantom lover from her past, surged through her veins, sharp and invigorating. Her eyes, suddenly alight with a keen, almost predatory awareness, scanned the depot, assessing entry points, potential cover, escape routes. The mundane surroundings melted away, replaced by a mental map of strategic possibilities. Outside, chaos erupted. Shouts, the thud of heavy boots, and then, unmistakably, the sharp crack of gunfire. Not distant pops from a training exercise, but the raw, unadulterated sound of live rounds. The panic in the voices of her colleagues, now rushing past the depot entrance, screaming and disoriented, was palpable. They were soldiers, yes, but they were trained for conventional warfare, for organized engagements, not for a sudden, visceral intrusion into their perceived sanctuary. Ellie remained still, a statue of quiet readiness amidst the swirling panic. Her training, deeply ingrained, kicked in, overriding any instinct for fear or flight. Her mind, cold and calculating, processed the sounds, the patterns of the gunfire, multiple assailants. Coordinated. This wasn't a lone intruder. This was a targeted attack. A frantic young supply technician, Corporal Davies, stumbled into the depot, his face ashen, his eyes wide with terror. "Sergeant Ward, what do we do? They're everywhere, heavily armed," he stammered, clutching a flimsy clipboard like a shield. Ellie's gaze met his, her eyes unblinking, strangely calm. "Stay low, Corporal," she ordered, her voice, usually so soft, now surprisingly firm, cutting through his panic. "Secure this area. Do not engage. Wait for further instructions." She spoke with an authority that Davies, accustomed to her quiet demeanor, had never heard. He nodded mechanically, too terrified to question, finding an unexpected anchor in her sudden command. Then, a new, more terrifying sound ripped through the air, a volley of automatic weapon fire, followed by a chorus of terrified screams coming from the direction of the command center. That was the heart of the base, where senior officers would be coordinating the response, and where crucial intelligence data was stored. If they got to the command center, the damage could be catastrophic. Without a moment's hesitation, Ellie moved. Her decision was instinctive, immediate, bypassing all protocol and self-preservation. Her past, buried for so long, clawed its way to the surface, demanding recognition. The supply clerk vanished, replaced by the ghost she truly was. She didn't grab a weapon. She knew the depot's limited firearms were locked away, and she didn't need one. Her body was her weapon, her mind her arsenal. She moved with a fluidity that defied her seemingly ordinary frame. The chaos outside, the shouts, the gunfire, seemed to fade into a distant hum. Her focus narrowed, her senses hyper-tuned. She ghosted through the connecting corridors, avoiding security cameras she knew by heart, anticipating patrol routes, moving like a phantom through the increasingly dangerous labyrinth of the compound. The sounds grew louder, more distinct, the heavy thud of tactical boots, the guttural shouts in a language she recognized as a specific Eastern European dialect, the desperate pleas of hostages. She reached the main corridor leading to the command center. The heavy blast doors, usually fortified, were bent inwards, clearly breached. The air was thick with the acrid smell of gunpowder and shattered plaster. Two armed figures, clad in dark tactical gear, their faces obscured by balaclavas, stood guard outside the shattered entrance, their automatic rifles held ready. This was it. The moment of truth. The true test of whether the ghost of her past could truly emerge. Her mind, operating at an accelerated pace, assessed the situation. Two armed targets, both focused on the interior of the command center, their attention divided by the ongoing standoff within. Their periphery was open, their stance slightly too relaxed. A fatal flaw she was trained to exploit. Without a sound, without a moment of hesitation, Sergeant Ellie Ward, the quiet supply clerk, moved. She was no longer just the base ghost. She was the ghost of their nightmares. The two armed intruders, guarding the breached entrance to the command center, were large, formidable men, their tactical gear making them appear even more imposing. Their attention was primarily fixed on the tense standoff unfolding inside. Their bodies coiled, ready to react to any shift in the volatile situation. They barked orders into their comms, their voices harsh and guttural in their foreign tongue. The air around them crackled with the raw energy of impending violence. They were professionals, undoubtedly, but in their focused intensity, they had neglected the most dangerous threat, the silent, unassuming figure who was now, impossibly, just yards behind them. Ellie Ward moved not with speed, but with an almost supernatural stealth. Her footsteps were utterly silent on the cracked linoleum floor, a testament to years of training in close-quarters infiltration. She was a blur of motion, a fleeting shadow in the periphery of their vision, a ghost of an idea before she became a terrifying reality. Her mind was a cold, calculating machine, assessing angles, trajectories, weaknesses. The supply clerk was gone. In her place stood a highly specialized operator, functioning on instinct and ingrained precision. The first intruder, positioned slightly to the left, his rifle angled towards the door, never saw her coming. Ellie struck with the force and fluidity of a coiled spring. Her right hand, hardened by years of rigorous training, targeted his exposed wrist, a swift, brutal strike designed to disable. Simultaneously, her left hand moved with lightning speed, hooking around the barrel of his automatic rifle, wrenching it downwards, away from its intended target. The intruder grunted, a strangled cry of surprise and pain, his grip on the weapon instantly compromised. Before he could fully register the attack, Ellie pivoted, using his own momentum against him, twisting his arm with a practiced, bone-jarring motion that sent the rifle clattering to the floor. A second later, her knee connected sharply with his groin, followed by a quick, decisive blow to the side of his neck, rendered with surgical precision. He crumpled, a heady sack of limbs, unconscious before he hit the ground. The entire sequence took less than 2 seconds. The second intruder, alerted by the muffled thud of his comrade, spun around, his weapon raised, his eyes wide with a fleeting moment of shock and confusion. He barely had time to register the seemingly harmless woman standing over his fallen partner before Ellie moved again. She didn't hesitate, didn't break her stride. As he brought his rifle to bear, her hand, still moving with impossible speed, shot out, snatching the muzzle with a grip of iron. This wasn't a desperate grab. There was a deliberate, trained maneuver. With a powerful twist of her wrist, a technique designed to disarm and incapacitate, she wrenched the rifle from his grasp, the weapon tearing free with a sickening crack as the man's shoulder dislocated. He roared in pain and fury, lunging at her with his remaining good arm, fueled by adrenaline and blind rage. But Ellie was already moving, anticipating his next move. She sidestepped his desperate lunge, her body weaving like water. As he stumbled past her, unbalanced, she drove her elbow into the base of his skull, a perfectly aimed strike designed to shut down his motor functions. He collapsed, unconscious, next to his partner, his weapon skittering across the floor. Silence, stark and profound, descended upon the corridor, broken only by the distant, muffled shouts from inside the command center. Eva stood over the two inert figures, her breathing shallow and even, her eyes scanning the immediate vicinity, her senses still heightened, searching for any other threats. There was no exhilaration, no triumphant surge of adrenaline, only the quiet, cold satisfaction of a mission executed with flawless precision. It was simply what she did. It was who she was. She quickly secured the two unconscious men, using tactical zip ties from her utility belt, a small, subtle piece of equipment she had always carried, even in her supply clerk role, a silent defiance of her burr. Assigned duties. She then retrieved their rifles, inspecting them with a quick, expert glance, before leaning them against the wall, out of reach. Now, her attention turned to the breached command center doors. The sounds from within indicated a desperate standoff. Shouts, interspersed with pleas, and the occasional, sharp retort of a weapon. She could hear at least 3 distinct voices, all male, belonging to the intruders. And at least 1, possibly 2, voices of the hostages, sounding strained and terrified. She took a deep breath, her mind already formulating a new plan. Her initial objective, neutralizing the external threat, was complete. Now, it was about resolution, about saving lives. She moved cautiously towards the shattered doorway, her senses acutely aware of every creak, every whisper of air. She peeked through the jagged opening, her eyes quickly assessing the chaotic scene within. The command center, a hub of advanced technology and strategic planning, was in disarray. Tables were overturned, computer screens lay shattered, and papers were scattered everywhere. 3 armed intruders, their faces covered, their bodies radiating a dangerous intensity, held a small group of personnel at gunpoint. Among the hostages, Ellie immediately recognized Colonel Vance, the base commander, a man known for his strict adherence to protocol and his almost dismissive attitude towards the non-essential staff. He was a tall, imposing figure, now reduced to a terrified hostage, his face pale, his usual composure shattered. Next to him was Major Anya Sharma, the sharp, no-nonsense intelligence officer, her dark hair disheveled, her eyes wide with fear, yet still holding a spark of defiant courage. A few other technicians and clerks huddled together, trembling. The lead intruder, a stocky man with a heavily scarred hand clutching his rifle, was barking orders at Colonel Vance, his voice laced with menace. "Tell me, where is it? The manifest, the new system codes." He pressed the barrel of his rifle against Vance's temple, a chilling display of intimidation. Ellie quickly processed the situation. 3 active threats. Hostages present. Direct engagement inside a confined space was risky, potentially endangering the hostages. She needed a distraction, a diversion, and then a swift, decisive neutralization. She retreated a step, her mind working furiously. She noticed a loose data cable snaking across the floor near the doorway, leading towards a server rack. An idea, audacious and risky, formed in her mind. It involved leveraging her knowledge of the base's infrastructure, a knowledge gained not from official schematics, but from countless hours of quiet observation and meticulous mental mapping during her mundane supply runs. She took out a small multi-tool from her belt, a seemingly innocuous item that was, in fact, a highly specialized piece of equipment. Her fingers, nimble and practiced, worked with incredible speed, manipulating the cable, creating a precise short circuit. A subtle spark, a faint smell of ozone. Then, the command center plunged into darkness. The sudden, unexpected blackout triggered immediate pandemonium inside. The intruders, momentarily disoriented, shouted in surprise, their carefully controlled situation dissolving into chaos. The hostages gasped, some crying out. This was her window. Ellie moved, not through the main doorway, but through a smaller, emergency access panel she knew existed behind a heavy service unit, a panel rarely used, almost invisible to the casual observer. She was a ghost, indeed, appearing where no one expected her to be. She slipped into the darkened room, her eyes quickly adjusting to the gloom, her night vision superior to theirs. The intruders were now scrambling, their flashlights sweeping wildly, trying to regain control. The lead intruder, still focused on Vance, had momentarily lowered his rifle, his attention fragmented by the sudden shift in environment. Ellie targeted him first. Her approach was silent, swift, and utterly unforgiving. In the chaos and darkness, her presence was undetectable, a whisper of motion in the periphery of their frantic vision. She was no longer just the silent supply clerk. She was the culmination of years of suppressed training, the brutal efficiency of a ghost finally unleashed. The standoff was about to end, not with negotiation or prolonged conflict, but with swift, silent, surgical precision. The sudden plunge into darkness in the command center was a disorienting, chaotic symphony of shouts, fumbling movements, and the sharp, anxious breaths of the hostages. The intruders, their flashlights now sweeping wildly like frantic beacons, were momentarily blind, their tactical advantage stripped away. This was precisely the chaos Ellie Ward had engineered. Her entry through the emergency access panel was flawless, a fluid motion into the darkened room, her senses immediately adapting, her body moving with the predatory grace of a hunter. Her target was the lead intruder, the man with the scarred hand who had threatened Colonel Vance. He was still barking orders, his voice laced with frustration and fury, his flashlight beam cutting erratically through the gloom, momentarily illuminating the terrified faces of the hostages. He was distracted, vulnerable. Ellie moved with the precision of her predator, her movements utterly silent, masked by the general pandemonium. She closed the distance in a few swift, ground-eating strides. Her right hand, a blur of motion, snaked out, not to strike, but to deftly wrench the flashlight from his grip, plunging him into deeper darkness. Before he could react, her left hand found the muzzle of his automatic rifle, twisting it sharply upwards, away from the cowering hostages. Simultaneously, her knee drove into his exposed abdomen, a brutal, efficient blow designed to incapacitate without lasting injury. The lead intruder gasped, a choked cry of pain and surprise. He stumbled backward, dropping his rifle, his senses overwhelmed. As he reeled, Ellie, with a swift, calculated movement, brought her elbow crashing down on the back of his neck, precisely targeting a nerve cluster. He collapsed, a heavy thud in the dark, silent and unconscious, before he hit the ground. The remaining two intruders, startled by the sudden thud and the absence of their leader's voice, spun their flashlights wildly, their fear palpable. One of them, closer to Ellie's position, swept his beam over the spot where his leader had just stood, seeing only darkness. He shouted something in his harsh language, his voice tinged with alarm. Ellie didn't give him time to react. She was already moving, flowing towards him, a phantom in the chaotic dark. Her approach was even more direct, more brutal. She drove her foot into his kneecap, a precision strike that buckled his leg, sending him tumbling to the ground with a cry of agony. Before he could even register the source of the attack, Ellie was on him, her hand gripping the back of his neck, slamming his head against the reinforced floor with a sharp, controlled impact. He went limp instantly. The third intruder, the last remaining threat, was now isolated, his flashlight beam frantically sweeping the room, his voice rising in a desperate, bewildered shout. He knew he was being hunted, but he couldn't see his assailant. His paranoia spiked, his movements becoming erratic, clumsy. Ellie allowed him a moment of panicked realization. She let her shadow fall across his flashlight beam, a fleeting, almost imperceptible glimpse of her presence. He whirled, his rifle raised, his finger twitching on the trigger. But he was too slow. As he fired a wild, unaimed shot that harmlessly ricocheted off a reinforced wall, Ellie was already in motion. She closed the distance with a powerful lunge, not towards him, but towards his extended arm. Her hand, a steel vise, clamped onto his wrist, twisting it violently, forcing him to drop the weapon. As the rifle clattered to the floor, she delivered a swift, concussive punch to his jaw, precisely aimed to knock him out without causing permanent damage. He slumped forward, unconscious, falling into a heap beside his comrades. The command center. Moments ago, a terrifying scene of hostage-taking and violence, was now utterly silent, save for the ragged breathing of the terrified hostages and the faint, rhythmic beep of a surviving server. Total darkness enveloped them, a profound quiet that seemed to absorb all sound. Ellie quickly moved, her hands locating the main power switch she had intentionally left operable near the entrance. With a flick, the fluorescent lights flickered to life, bathing the room in a harsh, revealing glow. The scene that met the eyes of the stunned hostages was surreal. 3 heavily armed intruders lay sprawled on the floor, unconscious, disarmed, and secured with tactical zip ties around their wrists and ankles. Their faces, now visible, showed signs of precise, non-lethal incapacitation. A bruise on a jaw, a slight swelling at the base of a skull. And standing over them, calm and unruffled, was Sergeant Ellie Ward, the quiet supply clerk. Her uniform still immaculate, her hair still in its neat bun, her expression utterly devoid of triumph, only a quiet, almost weary efficiency. The hostages, including Colonel Vance and Major Sharma, stared, their mouths agape, their eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief, awe, and residual terror. Their captors, who had moments ago held them at gunpoint, were now defeated, rendered harmless by a woman they had barely noticed on base. Colonel Vance, still visibly shaken, slowly pushed himself up from the floor, his eyes fixed on Ellie, a profound bewilderment etched on his face. "Sergeant Ward?" he stammered, his voice hoarse, disbelief warring with the undeniable evidence before him. "What, how?" Ellie simply nodded, her gaze sweeping over the relieved but bewildered faces of the hostages. "They're secured, Colonel," she stated, her voice calm and level, as if reporting on a routine inventory count. "No casualties among the personnel. They were after the new system codes and the classified manifest." Major Sharma, always quicker to process information, despite her initial shock, slowly rose, her gaze assessing the neatly disarmed intruders, then turning back to Ellie, her eyes narrowing with a sharp, professional beret. Curiosity. She recognized the efficiency, the precision, the sheer impossible skill. "Sergeant," she began, her voice gaining strength. "That was extraordinary. How did you—" Ellie simply shrugged, a subtle, almost dismissive gesture. "Training, Major." Colonel Vance, still reeling, moved towards one of the unconscious intruders, his hand reaching for the man's radio. "We need to secure the base. Alert command. Who are these men?" He looked at Ellie, his mind still struggling to reconcile the quiet supply clerk with the formidable force he had just witnessed. "Sergeant Ward," he said, his voice now imbued with a newfound respect, a dawning realization that he had profoundly underestimated her. I need to see your file, immediately." He pulled out his secure tablet, his fingers fumbling slightly as he typed in the request. The screen glowed, displaying Ellie's official military record. As he scrolled down, his eyes widened, then narrowed, a profound sense of shock replacing his bewilderment. His gaze swept over the classified entries, the redacted sections, the cryptic codes. His jaw dropped. "Ex-Ghost Recon," he read aloud, his voice a disbelieving whisper, the words echoing in the now silent command center. He scrolled further, his finger trembling slightly. "Cleared for Black Cell." He looked up at Ellie, his face a mask of utter astonishment, a mixture of disbelief, awe, and perhaps a flicker of fear. The man who had once joked about the base ghost now understood. He understood that Sergeant Ellie Ward was no ordinary supply clerk. She was a weapon, a ghost from an elite, shadowy past, a force of nature discreetly tucked away in the mundane. The laughter about the base ghost died in his throat, replaced by a profound, humbling silence. No one would ever joke again. The quiet supply clerk had just saved their lives and revealed a truth far more extraordinary than any legend. The revelation of Sergeant Ellie Ward's past, ex-Ghost Recon, cleared for Black Cell, hung in the air of the command center, thick with implications. Colonel Vance stared at her file on his tablet, his face a canvas of disbelief, his jaw slack. Major Sharma, her intelligence officer's mind already processing the seismic shift in understanding, looked at Ellie with a gaze that combined intense curiosity and profound respect. The other hostages, still recovering from the trauma of their ordeal, now viewed the quiet supply clerk with a mixture of awe and trepidation. The playful moniker of base ghost had taken on a chillingly literal meaning. Ellie, oblivious to their stunned reactions, simply stood at ease, her posture relaxed, her eyes scanning the room, already moving on to the next task, ensuring the perimeter was secured, the intelligence safeguarded. The adrenaline, which had peaked during the disarming, was now receding, leaving her with a familiar, quiet calm. Her mind was already on damage assessment, on preventing future breaches. "Sergeant Ward," Colonel Vance finally managed to say, his voice still hoarse, a tremor of awe underscoring his usual authoritarian tone. Why are you here? As a supply clerk?" His gaze swept from her unassuming uniform to the classified data on his screen, a stark contrast. The question was not an accusation, but a genuine plea for understanding. Ellie's gaze met his, her expression unreadable. "My previous assignment concluded, Colonel," she stated, her voice even, devoid of any emotional inflection. "I requested a reassignment to a non-combat role. This base offered that opportunity." It was a concise, truthful answer. Yet it offered no real insight into the profound shift she had orchestrated in her life. She offered no details of the last mission, the one that had pushed her to her limits, the one that had made her crave the quiet anonymity of the supply depot. The memories of that particular operation, cloaked in ice and shadow, were hers alone, fiercely guarded. Major Sharma, however, was not content with such a succinct explanation. Her sharp mind was already piecing together the fragments. "Ghost Recon operatives don't just conclude assignments, Sergeant," she observed, her voice low, laced with professional intrigue. "And Black Cell clearance, that's an extremely high-level, highly specialized designation," It suggests operations that are, well, off the books, beyond conventional military protocols. Why would someone with your background choose a supply role? It makes no logical sense." End quote. Ellie remained silent for a moment, her gaze briefly flickering towards the unconscious intruders, then back to Sharma. "Personal reasons, Major," she replied, her voice firm, signaling the end of that line of inquiry. Her past was a closed book, a vault she guarded fiercely. The scars on her psyche were far deeper than those on her hands, remnants of choices made under extreme duress, of lives taken, of burdens carried in silence. Colonel Vance, having finally composed himself, snapped back to command mode. "Right," he declared, his voice regaining some of its usual crispness, though still tinged with residual shock. "Major Sharma, secure the command center. Activate lockdown protocols. Sergeant Ward, you are to brief me immediately on the nature of this attack and your assessment of the intruders. Then, you will assist in coordinating the base's response." His orders came fast, his reliance on her newfound competence, immediate and absolute. The chain of command had subtly shifted, acknowledging the raw, undeniable skill she possessed. Within minutes, the base was swarming with military police, tactical teams, and medical personnel. The two unconscious intruders were taken into custody, their weapons secured. Ellie, with a quiet efficiency that left the seasoned officers around her stunned, delivered a concise, utterly professional briefing to Colonel Vance and his top brass. Her analysis of the intruders' tactics, their weaponry, and their likely objectives was remarkably accurate, her observations far exceeding anything the base's regular intelligence network had managed to gather. She spoke with a detached authority, her voice calm, her gaze unwavering, relaying facts with the precision of a seasoned operative. "Their objective was data," Ellie explained, pointing to the damaged server rack. "Specifically, the new system codes for Project Chimera and the classified arms manifest. They were well equipped, highly trained, and operating with a clear objective, likely a well-funded, non-state actor seeking to compromise NATO's strategic capabilities." End quote. Colonel Vance listened, mesmerized, watching the quiet woman he had dismissed as a clerk transform into a formidable tactical analyst. He realized the depth of his ignorance, the sheer waste of talent he had allowed to languish in a supply depot. "And how did you disable them so effectively, Sergeant?" he asked, still grappling with the sheer audacity and skill of her actions. "Without a weapon?" Ellie's lips barely twitched. "Close-quarters combat training, Colonel. Disarming techniques, pressure points, non-lethal takedowns, standard ghost recon protocol for sensitive situations where overt force could escalate the threat or endanger hostages." Bah! Her explanation was clinical, almost academic, devoid of any personal embellishment, as if she were reciting from a manual. Over the next few hours, Ellie became the de facto orchestrator of the base's counter-response. She moved with an effortless authority, her quiet commands resonating with an unshakable confidence. She coordinated search parties, analyzed security footage with an eagle eye, pointing out anomalies and overlooked details, and even assisted in setting up new defensive perimeters with a tactical awareness that surprised even the most experienced security officers. Her suggestions were always precise, always effective, always anticipating the enemy's next move. Major Sharma observed her closely, a deep respect growing within her. She recognized a kindred spirit, a woman of extraordinary capability, hidden behind an unassuming exterior. Later that day, as the immediate crisis began to recede, Sharma approached Ellie in the makeshift command center. "Sergeant Ward," Sharma began, her voice soft, respectful. "I've seen the after-action reports. Your actions were exemplary. You saved lives, and you prevented a catastrophic intelligence breach. I don't know what led you to request a posting in supply, but this base, NATO, needs your expertise. We can't afford to have someone of your caliber counting paperclips." Ellie looked at her, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. "My preference is for a quiet life, Major," she responded, her voice gentle but firm. The memory of the snow-laden mountain pass, the screams, the impossible choice she had been forced to make, still haunted her. The cost of her expertise had been immense, a price she still paid every day in the quiet solitude of her existence. "A quiet life is a luxury we may no longer be able to afford, Sergeant," Sharma countered, her gaze direct, unwavering. "Not with threats like these knocking on our door. You are an asset, Sergeant, a unique, invaluable asset, and I believe you have a duty to deploy your skills where they are most needed." Ellie remained silent, her gaze distant, contemplating Sharma's words. She had sought peace, a reprieve from the constant tension, the life-or-death decisions. But the crisis had dragged her back, proving that the past, no matter how deeply buried, always found a way to surface. The silence of the supply depot now felt like a fragile illusion, easily shattered. The quiet life she craved seemed increasingly unattainable in a world constantly teetering on the edge of conflict. Colonel Vance, having overheard the conversation, approached them. His face was no longer pale with fear, but etched with a newfound determination. "Major Sharma is right, Sergeant," he stated, his voice firm, echoing Sharma's sentiment. "We cannot allow such talent to remain underutilized. As of this moment, your assignment is officially changed. You are being reassigned to Major Sharma's Intelligence and Special Operations Unit, effective immediately, and I am personally recommending you for a direct promotion. You saved this base, Sergeant. You saved us all." Ellie looked at him, then at Major Sharma, her eyes holding a complex mixture of resignation and a faint, almost imperceptible spark of recognition. The uniform of a supply clerk was gone. The ghost had been unmasked, and the world, it seemed, was not quite ready to let her disappear into the quiet shadows she craved. Her journey back into the labyrinthine world of special operations, into the very heart of the conflict she had tried to escape, had just begun. The silence she had built around herself was broken, replaced by the demanding roar of a duty she could no longer deny. The base ghost was now unleashed, ready to haunt the enemies of NATO. The reassignment of Sergeant Ellie Ward to Major Anya Sharma's Intelligence and Special Operations Unit sent ripples of speculation through the NATO compound. The official narrative was that her exceptional performance during the intruder standoff had merited the promotion, a testament to quick thinking and bravery. Unofficially, whispers abounded, fueled by the terse, almost reverent tones of Colonel Vance and Major Sharma whenever Ellie's name was mentioned. The base ghost was no longer a joke. She was a legend, a living enigma walking among them, her presence now tinged with a quiet awe. Ellie herself felt a profound sense of resignation. The comfortable, predictable routine of the supply depot, a carefully constructed sanctuary, had been irrevocably shattered. The past she had so meticulously buried, the skills she had diligently suppressed, had clawed their way back to the surface, demanding to be acknowledged. She was a professional, and duty, honed by years of rigorous training, dictated her next steps. She accepted the promotion, the new assignment, with the same quiet efficiency she applied to every task, her inner turmoil carefully masked. Her new workspace was a stark contrast to the dusty shelves of the depot. It was a high-tech nerve center, a secure room buzzing with the low hum of servers and the quiet clicking of keyboards. Giant screens displayed intricate maps, real-time data feeds, and encrypted communications. Major Sharma, her new commanding officer, was a formidable woman, sharp and analytical, with a deep understanding of geopolitical complexities. Their professional relationship was one of immediate, unspoken respect, a mutual recognition of high-level intellect and unwavering dedication. Major Sharma wasted no time in integrating Ellie into the unit's most sensitive operations. Her first assignment was to meticulously analyze the data recovered from the captured intruders' comms and equipment, a task that demanded not just technical skill, but an intuitive understanding of adversary tactics. Ellie plunged into the work with a focused intensity, her mind, a precision instrument, sifting through layers of encrypted code, voice recordings, and satellite imagery. She uncovered subtle patterns, previously overlooked connections, and identified a highly sophisticated, transnational network responsible for the attack, far more dangerous than initially assumed. "Their signature is unique, Major," Ellie reported to Sharma one afternoon, her voice calm as she pointed to intricate network diagrams projected onto a large screen. They operate with military precision, but their funding and infrastructure suggest a hybrid model, leveraging both state and non-state resources. Their primary objective wasn't just data theft. It was disruption, destabilization. They're probing our weaknesses, testing our response capabilities." End quote. Sharma listened intently, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Excellent work, Sergeant," she commended, her gaze filled with genuine admiration. "Your insights are invaluable. You've given us a crucial edge. It confirms my suspicion that this was merely a preliminary probe." Ellie nodded, a faint, almost imperceptible tightening around her eyes. She knew what came next. Analysis always led to action. The quiet life, the one she had sought so desperately, was slipping further and further away. Days bled into weeks, each one bringing Ellie deeper into the intricate web of global intelligence and covert operations. She participated in strategic planning sessions, her contributions consistently insightful, her tactical recommendations often providing breakthroughs. She redesigned existing base security protocols, transforming them into a layered, almost impenetrable defense system, anticipating every possible threat vector. Her reputation within the unit grew rapidly, not just as the woman who had single-handedly disarmed the intruders, but as a strategic genius, a silent force of unparalleled competence. Yet, despite her undeniable effectiveness, Ellie remained an enigma. She rarely engaged in small talk, her personal life a meticulously guarded secret. Her colleagues in the unit, though respectful, kept a subtle distance, intimidated by her aura of quiet intensity. She was a living legend, but also a figure cloaked in shadow, her past hinting at an unfathomable depth of experience and sacrifice. She never spoke of her time in Ghost Recon, of the Black Cell operations, leaving her colleagues to speculate about the nature of those highly classified missions, their imaginations filling in the blanks with whispered rumors of impossible feats and dangerous encounters. One evening, as the base was quieting down, Major Sharma found Ellie in her office, poring over a complex threat assessment report. Sharma hesitated at the doorway, then entered, a mug of steaming tea in her hand. "Working late, Sergeant?" Sharma asked, her voice soft, devoid of her usual professional crispness. Ellie looked up, her expression unreadable. "The threat is constant, Major." Sharma nodded, placing the mug on Ellie's desk. "Indeed. But so is the need for rest. You've been relentless, Sergeant, even for someone with your capabilities." She paused, her gaze thoughtful. "I know you sought a quieter life, Ellie, and I appreciate your dedication to duty, but I also understand the toll such a past can take. Is there anything you'd like to talk about?" Ellie stiffened imperceptibly, her hand briefly clenching around the mug. Her past was a raw nerve, a wound she meticulously kept hidden. "My past is my own, Major," she replied, her voice low, bordering on a warning. "It does not affect my current performance." Sharma held her gaze, her eyes empathetic, non-intrusive. "I'm not questioning your performance, Ellie. It's exceptional. I'm merely acknowledging that even the strongest among us carry burdens. You don't have to carry them alone, not here." Ellie looked away, her gaze distant, reflecting on the ice-covered peaks of a distant, unforgiving mountain range. On the blinding white snow and the chilling silence that had followed the detonation, the single, agonizing decision that had saved countless lives, but cost her a piece of her soul. The memory was a fresh scar, throbbing with suppressed pain. "Some burdens," Ellie finally said, her voice barely above a whisper, "are meant to be carried alone, Major. They define us. They make us who we are." Sharma nodded slowly, her expression understanding. She didn't press. She recognized the wall Ellie had erected, a formidable barrier born of profound experience and deep-seated trauma. "Very well, Sergeant," she said, her voice gentle. "Just know that the offer stands. We are a team here. You are not alone in this fight." With a final, sympathetic look, Sharma left Ellie to her thoughts and the glowing screens. Ellie remained in the quiet office, the hum of the machines a lonely comfort. The world outside her window, once a blur of safe, mundane activity, was now a chessboard, a theater of operations where her suppressed skills were once again in demand. She had sought to disappear, to become a ghost of her former self, but the world had conspired to pull her back into the fight. The incident at the command center had been an undeniable call to duty, a stark reminder that some destinies, once forged, could not be escaped. The base ghost was no more. In her place stood a woman of extraordinary power, ready to face the shadows she had once tried to outrun. The silence was gone, replaced by the quiet hum of purpose and the chilling promise of impending conflict. Her journey, she realized, was not about escaping her past, but about embracing it, harnessing it, and using it to protect the world she had sworn to serve. The new threat assessment compiled by Ellie Ward, detailing the sophisticated network behind the compound Intrusion, sent a jolt through NATO High Command. Her findings painted a grim picture, a well-organized, highly resourced entity, far beyond a typical terrorist cell, operating with a chilling level of precision and strategic foresight. It wasn't just about stealing data. It was about testing defenses, gathering intelligence for a far larger, more disruptive operation. Major Sharma, presenting Ellie's analysis to a grim-faced assembly of generals and intelligence chiefs, underscored the urgency. Sergeant Ward's insights, Sharma concluded, her voice crisp, suggest that this was merely a probing action. The next move will be more significant, more devastating. We need to act, and we need to act now. The consensus was clear. A preemptive, surgical strike was required. The target, a clandestine data facility deep within a remote mountainous region, identified by Ellie's meticulous analysis as the nerve center of the network. The mission: neutralize the facility, retrieve any remaining intelligence, and capture or eliminate key personnel. It was a black cell-level operation, demanding the utmost secrecy, precision, and a team of unparalleled skill. Ellie was, naturally, indispensable to the planning. She meticulously mapped out infiltration routes, identified potential choke points, and even predicted enemy response patterns with an eerie accuracy. Her knowledge of covert operations, gained from years in the shadows, proved invaluable. She was no longer just analyzing data. She was shaping the very strategy of the mission. Yet, she remained in the background during most of the high-level discussions, speaking only when directly addressed. Her contributions delivered with a quiet, unshakable confidence that belied her rank. "Sergeant Ward," Colonel Vance addressed her one morning in the war room, his voice now devoid of any trace of his past dismissiveness, replaced by unadulterated respect. "Given your unique expertise and your intimate knowledge of the target, you will be part of the infiltration team. You will serve as the tactical lead for the ground assault, working alongside Captain Alexei Volkov and his PRET. Special Forces Unit." Ellie's gaze remained steady. The thought of returning to direct combat, to the life she had tried so hard to leave behind, stirred a complex mix of emotions within her. There was the familiar hum of anticipation, the sharp focus that only such high-stakes operations could bring. But there was also a profound weariness, a knowledge of the personal cost of such endeavors. She merely nodded, a silent acceptance of the inevitable. Captain Volkov, a burly, experienced Special Forces operative, known for his bluntness and unwavering loyalty to his men, eyed Ellie with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity during their first briefing. He had heard the whispers, the legends of the base ghost, but he was a man who trusted only what he saw in the field. "Sergeant," Volkov began, his voice gruff, "I run a tight unit. We operate on trust, on instinct. No disrespect, but your background, it's unconventional for a tactical lead in a direct action scenario." Ellie met his gaze, her eyes unwavering. "My objective is mission success, Captain," she stated, her voice calm, devoid of any challenge. "My methods are effective. My history is classified. My loyalty is to NATO." Her words were concise, a subtle warning against further probing. Volkov held her gaze for a long moment, then gave a curt nod. He recognized the steel in her eyes, the quiet authority in her demeanor. He decided to trust the judgment of Colonel Vance and Major Sharma, and the formidable reputation that preceded her. "Very well, Sergeant. Let's see what you've got." The deployment was swift and clandestine. They flew under the cover of darkness, a small, elite team in a specialized transport aircraft, cutting through the crisp night air. The atmosphere in the cabin was tense, charged with the quiet anticipation of impending combat. Ellie sat apart from the others, meticulously checking her gear, her movements fluid and practiced. She had foregone the standard-issue uniform for a specialized, lightweight tactical suit, its dark fabric designed for stealth and flexibility. Her small, multi-tool, a silent testament to her past, was securely attached to her belt. She carried no primary firearm, a deliberate choice that baffled Volkov, but one she would explain only as unnecessary weight. As they neared the target zone, the desolate snow-capped peaks of the remote mountain range loomed outside the windows, dark and imposing against the faint moonlight. A familiar chill, both literal and metaphorical, crept into Ellie's bones. This terrain, this stark, unforgiving landscape, was a haunting echo of her last Ghost Recon mission, the one that had broken her, the one that had led her to the supply depot. The memories, long suppressed, threatened to overwhelm her. The blinding snow, the bitter wind, the screams of the trapped civilians, the agonizing decision to detonate the charge, sacrificing a handful to save millions. It was a memory she fought to keep locked away, but the cold reality of her current mission, so similar in its unforgiving nature, threatened to unlock the vault. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, taking a slow, deep breath, anchoring herself in the present. This was different. This was a new mission, the new enemy. She had a purpose. She was not the broken operative of the past. She was the resurrected ghost, stronger, wiser, and more focused than ever. The insertion was flawless, a silent drop under the cover of darkness. They moved like wraiths through the snow-laden terrain, the biting wind whipping around them. Ellie led the way, her movements surprisingly agile, her knowledge of the treacherous landscape seemingly innate. She navigated hidden crevices, avoided tripwires, and identified enemy patrol routes with uncanny precision, guiding Volkov's team through the treacherous, snow-covered landscape towards the hidden facility. Volkov, initially skeptical, watched her move with growing awe, recognizing the unparalleled skill of a true master. As they approached the facility, nestled deep within a fortified mountain cavern, Ellie signaled for them to halt. She used a specialized thermal imager, its display showing faint heat signatures, revealing hidden sentries, unseen cameras, and subterranean access points. 2 sentries, front gate, 4 within the perimeter, she whispered into her comms, her voice calm and steady. Thermal readings indicate a complex underground structure, multiple levels, possible secondary exits and ventilation shafts. Target the main power grid first, then secure the data core. Captain, your team will neutralize the perimeter. My objective is the data core." End quote. Volkov nodded, his skepticism completely replaced by absolute trust. "Understood, Sergeant. Let's move." The assault was executed with chilling efficiency. Volkov's team moved like a well-oiled machine, neutralizing the exterior threats with swift, silent precision. Ellie, however, moved with an almost supernatural fluidity. She bypassed the main entrance, finding a hidden access tunnel, a forgotten ventilation shaft she had identified from satellite imagery, a faint, almost invisible seam in the mountain rock. She was once again a ghost, slipping into the enemy's stronghold unseen, unheard. She moved through the dimly lit tunnels of the facility, her path guided by her pre-mission analysis and an uncanny spatial awareness. The air grew stale, carrying the faint scent of ozone and machine oil. She heard the muffled sounds of Volkov's team engaging the remaining guards above, the brief, sharp bursts of suppressed gunfire. Her mission, however, was solitary, a silent race against time to reach the data core before the enemy could destroy it. She encountered 2 guards in a narrow corridor, their backs to her, engrossed in a tense conversation in their guttural language. Ellie didn't hesitate. She moved with the same surgical precision she had displayed at the base, disarming and incapacitating them both in a matter of seconds, her movements a blur of practiced efficiency. They crumpled silently, unconscious before they even registered her presence. She was not fighting. she was simply nullifying. She finally reached the main server room, a vast chamber filled with the hum of electronics and the blinking lights of countless data drives. A single armed guard stood before the massive vault door, his posture tense. He was clearly expecting an assault from the main entrance, his attention fixed on the heavy steel door. Ellie moved from the shadows, her approach as silent as the grave. The guard turned at the last possible second, his eyes widening in a moment of pure, unadulterated terror as he registered the silent figure closing in. He raised his rifle, but it was already too late. Ellie's hand, a blur of motion, disarmed him, the rifle clattering to the ground. A swift, precise strike to the neck rendered him unconscious, leaving him slumped against the vault door. Ellie quickly moved to the vault controls, her fingers flying across the keypad, inputting the complex override codes she had painstakingly deciphered during her analysis. The massive door hissed open, revealing a smaller, inner chamber. Inside, several technicians were frantically attempting to purge the data from the core, their faces illuminated by the frantic blinking of indicator lights. They turned, their eyes wide with panic as they saw her. Ellie drew a small, non-lethal pulse weapon, a device designed to incapacitate electronics without causing physical harm. She aimed it at the central data core, a single, decisive shot. The core sputtered, its lights flashing erratically, then powered down, inert. The data, for now, was secured. She then systematically disarmed and secured the terrified technicians, her movements efficient and dispassionate. Her mission was complete. The facility was neutralized, the intelligence secured, the threat averted. As Captain Volkov and his team burst into the server room moments later, their weapons raised, they found Ellie standing amidst the unconscious technicians and the inert data core, calm and composed, as if she had just completed a routine inventory check. Volkov stared, his expression a mixture of awe and something akin to reverence. "Sergeant," he breathed, his voice thick with unadulterated respect. "You truly are a ghost." Ellie simply nodded, her gaze sweeping over the secured room. The past, the haunting memories of ice and snow, of impossible choices, still lingered. But this time, she had faced the darkness and emerged not broken, but whole. The base ghost had walked into a standoff, and in doing so, had finally found her true purpose, not in hiding from her past, but in wielding its formidable power to protect the world. The silence she had once craved was no longer a sanctuary, but a canvas for her unspoken triumphs.